No need to go far and wide. Let Hometown provide. Hometown Trophies and Embroidery in Lena can help turn your ideas into reality. From awards, engraving, and gifts to custom apparel and business accessories, they have you covered. Visit them today or give them a call at 815-369-9. That's Hometown Trophies Embroidery. Let your vision become their masterpiece.
When it comes to planning for your future, you want someone you can trust. At Prairie State Investments, Mark Pfeiffer is here to help you build a plan that fits your life, your family, and your goals. Whether it's retirement, college savings, or investing wisely for tomorrow, Mark has the knowledge and local commitment to guide you every step of the way. Don't leave your future up to chance. Call Mark Pfeiffer at Prairie State Investments today at 815-668-8131 and start investing with confidence. Welcome to NUIC All Access, joined by Jay Doyle and Joe Merdian. I am your host, Kyle Kampmier. Today we feature 3 guests from the Pecatonica Indian Girls Basketball team. Jay, introduce our guests to us today.
All right, Kyle. Today's guests are Pecatonica head coach Daniel Rosenstiel, along with sophomore sensations Korah Noud and Ryleigh Alexander. Here's a look at what they've accomplished so far. 2025 Class 1A state champions. Ryleigh Alexander was a second-team all-conference player. Korah Noud was an honorable mention all-conference player. Daniel Rosenstiel has guided Pecatonica to their first state title in school history in any sport. Currently are 9-5 on the season, an early favorite in the NUIC North.
So, welcome to the show, ladies, and
Thanks
Coach
for having us.
Rosenstiel. Absolutely. So, Coach, we'll start with you. And, you took over the program 3 seasons ago, and in that span, Pecatonica has now captured its first ever team state championship, along with 2 regional titles under your leadership. What were the first non-negotiables that you had to put in place in order to help drive and change the standard of Pecatonica?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we kind of looked at, so I would say, is togetherness. You're not going to go anywhere individually. So one of the first things in my brain when I took over was like, I got to get a staff that's going to be with me, support our kids. And then I need kids that are going to be together. Like I said, you can do a lot of things individually, but you can't really go anywhere if you're not together. And so we kind of made that like our creed. That's how we break it out. That's what we post on social media, is always together. So I would say the togetherness, like the way we play, the way we carry ourselves, like we do everything together and for each other and for our school. The second one I would say is toughness. We kind of took over and we were like, we want to be one of the premier programs playing premier games against good teams. And the only way you do that is, you can't run from the smoke. You gotta have kids that want to go put the fire out. We want to be in those tough situations. So I think creating that tough environment, the way we practice, and then obviously the opponents that we schedule, that was something that we definitely right away early wanted to do, because it helps you not just in the first couple of years, but then it just builds and builds, and that's an expectation that kids come into our high school program and expect to play in big games. And I think the last one is just trust. I feel like one of the biggest things I tried to do right away, I reached out to that first senior class. It was actually Paige Moore and Lauren Rager, and both of them would tell you like they aren't huge basketball players. Like they played basketball, but it wasn't like their true passion necessarily. But I really wanted to start with them because you have to have kids that trust you and trust that you have the best intentions for them and for the team. And I really think that's kind of built. It was something that we did a really good job of. And then they took it upon themselves to create that bond in our program. And it's just fed from there every single year. The senior class especially has kind of carried that on. And then you get kids that start coming in and seeing it, like these two, when they came in as freshmen, they saw the bond and the trust that they had with each other. And when you have teams that are really close, you can have a program that every year is successful and at least can be competitive and, chase the things that everybody wants to chase.
Yeah, I think on the one point you hit there, and I know we've talked about it and we were talking about it off air, was scheduling. And you guys are currently at the Dixon Holiday Tournament. And that's one of the, I would say, the premier. You get to get away from the area, you get to go down to Dixon and see different teams and some of the top teams. And I think sometimes people don't understand putting your team in a difficult situation will help you further on in the season rather than maybe going to a less challenging tournament year after year and getting the wins rather than maybe finishing 2-2 or 3-1 or having a couple losses, but it gains that experience of what you guys had, I know, last year and even this year.
I think
with
they
the
would
teams
tell
you're
you
seeing.
last year, obviously winning the state title, but that CSE game, that's a really good example. I think they could probably both tell you that. Like we walked into the locker room after playing that Camp Point Central co-op team and they beat us by like 30. And I mean, they literally all looked at each other and said, we got to practice harder. We got to play harder. We got to coach better. So like you said, playing in those moments, and same this year, like we have a young group. But we're not going to run from it. We want to play those really good teams so that hopefully, come February, you're pretty battle tested and been in a lot of tough moments that can hopefully help us, down the stretch when we need it.
Korah, you were a freshman starting on that state championship team. What did that season teach you about the difference between talented teams and championship teams?
That talent might get you noticed, but our habits were what really won the championship. Talented teams definitely use their skills, their speed, their size in moments that are going good for them. But championship teams are able to use their habits and just what they build off of in games that aren't going their way or situations that aren't going their way.
So, Ryleigh, you stepped into a starting role as well as a freshman and shared that run with your older sister, Erica, coming off the bench. How did having her in the program impact your confidence?
I think having her in the program just really let me know that I had somebody there that always had my back, and it just really helped me to be a little bit more confident later in the year when I really needed to, and she just helped me realize that I could be confident and still play along with the seniors and with Korah and let them do their part but also do my part.
Daniel, back to you on from correlating last year to this year. Last year on that championship team, you leaned heavily on the 4 seniors, including Elena Rager, who's now playing at Division I Wright State. How intentional are you putting Korah and Ryleigh in difficult situations, knowing that that was key to success at the end of the year and also building on to this year and the following
obviously,
years?
when you have a group of seniors like we had, that's a huge thing. And then obviously it's a huge blessing to get these two that came in and, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see they were really talented. And it's holy cow, they can do things too. And at times be maybe the best player on the court. I think one of the things that really helped early in the year, our staff kind of got together and we just made the commitment hey, we're going to go with the 2 freshmen with the seniors and we're going to rotate. Erica Alexander did a great job kind of accepting that role and she was very understanding, which was huge. And everybody kind of bought into the role. But I think the biggest thing that I tried to do last year and our staff did is I'm sure they could tell you how many times I texted them, you can't blend in when you're born to stand out. And I told them, you have to be yourself and play basketball the way you know how, not just the way you play, but how you lead on the court. I would make the argument that last year, Ryleigh and Peyton Thomas were kind of the spark, they were the energy and the hype girls, and they kind of kept the team with swagger and kept everybody up. And then Korah kind of was a blend of the Kiana and Elena, she's going to do the lead by example, but also kind of talk out there because they have high IQs. So kind of putting them in those situations and just reminding them to be themselves. That's the only way. The whole team kind of buying into the role and being themselves and just blending everybody together is the only way you're ever going to be successful. And then translating it to this year, obviously, we had conversations about that last year at times hey, if you guys want to do this again or you want to keep the standard high, you have to take the things you're learning in the game and from the seniors and from the coaches on how to be leaders. And that's something that they're, obviously working through and figuring that out as they go. And it's kind of nice that they're only 16-year-old sophomores and can kind of keep learning themselves. But it was definitely intentional. And it was something that, we were very blessed and had a team that bought into roles. And these guys, that was something we thought in the future, hey, now you know what it takes and you know what it looks like. And hopefully they can kind of keep pushing it forward and bring everybody along with them.
Hey, Korah, as a freshman last year, surrounded by that experienced group of seniors, what did you learn about leadership before, this year where you're expected to be one of the leaders?
Being around the seniors definitely showed me that leadership is about behaviors. Coming in and seeing them work so hard and practice with a purpose every day really showed me what true leadership means. And I also learned that being a true leader is setting the standards when nobody is watching, and that leading by example is one of the best ways to do that.
And Ryleigh, now that those seniors have graduated, the expectations didn't reset like Coach Rosie was talking about already. How has your approach changed now that you're one of the players opponents are trying to game plan for rather than being a complimentary player that you were last year?
Film has really been always a huge part of preparation for me. And last year it was more watching film defensively and figuring out how to stop certain players. But this year, although high school is more difficult, I feel I'm stepping back into a more role that I had in middle school where it's on both ends of the floor. So it's really sitting down, watching film, seeing where my strengths can be effective in a game and understanding where I can be effective and help.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges to any player is I think some people just think it's going to be an easy transition, but it's going from that role of last year of, maybe in a key situation to pass the ball off, or now it's trying to find and identify that role of where's the ball going to go in the last 2 minutes of a game, and making sure that the other players now understand their roles, right? Because now that your roles have changed, everybody else's on the team has changed. And I think that's one of the toughest things early on when you see a team graduate like what you guys did, the seniors you graduated, and to have the success you guys have had. There are going to be growing pains, but like we've talked about, everybody wants to be playing their best basketball come January, February. And that's one of the big things I think we've seen throughout the conference and region is how talented the senior class of a lot of schools were. And everybody's kind of fighting through that breakdown. And that's what you guys, you've talked about, Korah and Ryleigh, now setting the example that you guys, the ball goes through you rather than last year, knowing that the ball went through Elena. So Daniel, Pecatonica now has won 4 regionals in school history, with the majority coming recently. How do you, what separates programs with a single breakthrough and having multiple? How do you now work on having sustained success from not only last year to this year, but the next coming years?
It all obviously starts with players. We've been very fortunate. I think you're seeing that in our school, not just girls basketball, but we've had a pretty good run in a lot of sports with a lot of good athletes and a lot of good families. So that obviously makes a coach's life easier in that aspect. But one of the things I've really been trying to do, I don't think I did a very good job the first couple of years, like the first 2 years, I would say, is trying to develop the middle school program and get down there more. I'm trying to get coaches that are going to do the things that we ask and that are going to, translate this to be similar to when they get to high school, get the high school girls to be a little bit more involved down at the middle school and go see them. I know that was something we did with Korah's 8th grade year. We tried to get our girls to go down and see our current sophomore class. So that's something, obviously trying to, embed and then mold that younger talent to see what it takes and, make them feel just as a part of it as, the high school kids that are getting the recognition. And I think with that, all of a sudden you start bringing them to games and they start seeing, they idolize these girls, little eyes are always watching. And, we've been very fortunate that the high school kids have done everything the right way. Win or lose, they're great kids on and off the court. And I think that really helps kind of keep sustained success. You see it at any other, great program, the Byron footballs, the Lena footballs, winning breeds winning. And I think that's something we've definitely been able to take advantage of. And hopefully we can keep kind of doing that and be in a good spot.
Korah, defense is obviously giving you more attention this season. What adjustment has been the most important for you
I
to stay
think
effective?
that the biggest adjustment is definitely just slowing the game down and trusting myself and my teammates' reads. Though teams are going to be more dialed in on me defensively, I think staying composed and taking care of the ball and just being strong with the ball is a way that I can stay effective in the game.
Korah, your scoring output here the last couple games has really started to show out as well in your game. Is that something you knew that you had to pick up on in order for your team to continue to have success with coming off of last year's state championship run, and with you and Ryleigh now being, you're only sophomores, but you guys are the leaders of this team?
What Ryleigh was saying, even in middle school where we had to take that spot as a leader and just lead our team, especially by example in scoring, rebounding, all of that, encouraging each other, I think that really helped me is realizing that we're not going to have those top scorers that's the same as last year, so somebody has to step up and do it.
And Ryleigh, how do you manage the pressure and expectations without letting last year's championship kind of distract from the work that needs to be done in this season? Last year's season's over. You guys won state, which was phenomenal. How do you have that reset that you have to continue to drive those expectations this year?
Is my approach is not to let it distract. And when I'm on the court, I'm not thinking about any of the accomplishments from last year, anything that happened last year. I'm just most concerned about the game that we're in and what we're doing right then and there to help our team.
And then Daniel, on your end, I remember we talked to you after the state win last year, and you guys really used motivation of the previous year loss in the regionals. How do you find now a different switch after winning state last year?
Yeah, obviously there's always, motivations. I think you have to balance the motivation and then also accepting that every team you coach is different and, they're going to face different adversities and have different skill sets. I think for me, thinking about this, I'm not going in every year, and talking to the team like it's state or bust. Obviously we want to win the state title every year, every program does, but we just want to maximize the potential that every team has. I feel like, that's kind of one of the goals, and the team sets goals. There's, big goals, and there's also smaller goals like winning conference or winning another regional, like, that you check along the way. But I don't know. I think the other part of it too is like when you set the high goal every time like that, when like, that you're chasing state, obviously that's what, is the goal at the end, but you also have to understand that there's steps to take. And I think this team has actually done a pretty good job of understanding, like, we are not, the same team. We are not at that level yet of like, where we want to be. Well, we know that we're trying and climbing the steps and kind of building on it to get back to where we do want to be at the end of the year. So it's a balance for sure. And it's something, I try not to relate to the team last year too much to them. And, maybe they might say that I do, I don't know, but it's just something that it's something you're along the way, you're thinking of different ways to motivate and doing different things that would help this group that maybe wouldn't help last year's group. So I don't know. And then the other part of it, just from a program standard, is like, I think there's only been a few schools that have ever won the state title in basketball in general. It's super hard, obviously, and you get the Chicago areas and the really good teams from the South. But I think the program goal is, I've always said hopefully we can have 3. I think no program has 3. I think Sophie's got 2, Byron's got 2 first places. Well, that's, obviously you want your program to be the best, and that's what you're chasing, but it's a process for sure. And that's kind of how we treat it, just a day at a time. So,
hey, Korah, what's a moment this season where maybe you found yourself holding a teammate to a higher standard than maybe you would have a year ago?
One moment is definitely pushing each other in practices. Last year, I probably would have kept my head down, focused on my own reps, and focused on myself getting better. While this year, I have to not only push myself, but push my teammates too. And I think a big role in that is just making everybody better around me and wanting to improve and just pushing each other as a whole.
Ryleigh, we've kind of already talked about your transition from last year's contribution player as a freshman to now being one of the core leaders as a sophomore, which in itself it's hard to do at times, but you guys, both you and Korah, have done a great job at it so far early in the season. Last year, you really came on the show, and like you said already, it was really all about your defense. How has your mindset shifted to be more incorporated into the offensive side as well?
Really just been, like Rosie always says, taking the shots you're expected to take, and also like knowing that the shot that I'm taking is a good shot and that I need to be able to miss and go back on defense and then go back on offense and be ready to shoot again and not waste any time.
Yeah, I think the toughest thing you see sometimes with younger players, or just sometimes any players when they're trying to find roles, I've found has been one of the things our growing pains have been, is understanding that you're going to miss a shot and it's okay. And I think that sounds very simple, but I think sometimes people or players will miss a shot or two early, and it allows them to affect them the whole game. And that's one of the things that as young players, I would say, and you got to work through, because it's like I think everybody thinks they're never going to miss a shot. And it's like, I always use the saying with some of our girls. It was like, I heard it back in the day. It was shoot to get hot, shoot to stay hot, and it's like, you got to keep shooting, coach will tell you when to stop doing it. Trust me. But it's like, you got to do those things and have the confidence to do it and know you're going to miss in a moment here and there. But that's one of the things, seeing your guys' games. You guys have done a very good job from game 1, because I remember Joe got to see it game 1 when you guys went down to Polo and you guys came out, and I think everybody was watching that game as a premier game to see how you guys were going to come out. And it was one of those things, you come out firing and let it all on the court. And that's one of the things through 31 games is a learning experience.
Yeah, and I would actually
everybody.
say too, from last year at the end of the year, like basically I think what ended up happening at the beginning and the middle of the season was like these two were shooting like almost not to miss, and I think they would probably tell you that. And then it's like this, they're playing, not to make mistakes, and then all of a sudden, like kind of by the end of the year, it's like, well, we're hoopers, like we're supposed to be out here doing what we're supposed to do. And I mean, I think, the playoff run, like these two, like kind of scored a lot. Like the whole team, like really stepped in. Like there's some games where Atlanta Rager didn't score really. Like she was in foul trouble, and these two and other players on the court were, playing as a whole unit and just taking shots freely. And then they come back this year and it's almost like the opposite. Now it's almost like they're probably feeling like, oh, am I shooting too much, or am I and how do I get other? And it's like, no, you have to become scorers, and it's an adjustment, like you said. And, they probably are like, holy cow, I've shot more in one game than I shot probably in 3 games last year. So it's an adjustment, and it's something that they're doing a good job learning, I think. So,
So Daniel, we're with Korah and Ryleigh, but as a team now, what do you see through the first probably half of the year is the biggest improvement you guys have to do to keep pushing towards the postseason?
I would say a couple areas. We need to keep people out of the paint. So like defensively, that's kind of been our identity. We got to stop giving up dribble penetration and keep people out of the paint, whether it's in man or zone. I think taking care of the basketball in the game. We had a pretty good win, I would say, against Lutheran. That's probably our, I would say, maybe quote unquote best win. And we valued the basketball against a good team and got good shots every time down the court and won. And then we've had 5 losses, and in those games we're turning the ball over. So we've got to clean those up from a fundamental aspect, I think, for sure, taking care of the ball and just keeping people out of the paint and contesting. And I think for the rest of the group, really the part that's we're starting to see it, you're starting to see the Ava Ackermans, the Amani Boyds, they're starting to kind of fill into that role and start to understand like, hey, you can't just rebound, like you got to score, you got to take some shots. And I think I've been really pleased with them. Haley Hoffman, Maddie Tipton, obviously 2 other guards that, are starting to kind of figure out like, hey, you have to take some shots to make defenses guard you. You have to run the floor. So I think we're kind of learning that. And as a coach, I try to remind myself I don't do a good job because I want to win every game. But outside of really Ryleigh and Korah and Amani, like none of our team played varsity basketball last year in like key roles, right? Like they were mostly for us soft players as freshmen or sophomores. So we've got a team that's out there, and like as a coach, you want to win every game and you think that they can, be perfect, and you have to understand that they can't. Like this is their first experiences through these, and slowly but surely they are making steps forward. It might not be at the pace they want, and it's probably not the pace we always want, but it's there when you see it on the film and you watch it and you can see the glimpses. So that's something I've been proud of with the group, and if we can clean the turnovers and maybe play a little better defense and keep people out of the paint, might have a better chance to win some of these bigger games that we're in.
So talk about Ava Ackerman real quick. You mentioned her, and that's one of the places where I've noticed a lot of growth just in the past 3 weeks is her elevating her game and becoming more of a focal player in your offense. How has that really helped you guys out as far as what she's been able to provide?
Yeah, she's been tough as nails. I mean, I think Ryleigh and Korah would both tell you, like, I don't know what it's been the last, like, probably 3 weeks, I would say. Like, all of a sudden, she's like, oh, I can, just move people out of the way and rebound and, go up strong. Which has been a huge development, especially because she's only a junior. So obviously it's nice, that we could have her for 2 years. And if she can keep kind of going on this path and trajectory, that's really good. But I think the biggest thing that she is providing is she's giving these 2 some relief, right? Like obviously, you can't win with just a couple people scoring the basketball. You have to have balance. If you look at all the teams that have ever gone anywhere or win anything, it's usually 5 to 6 girls that can throw in between anywhere from, 6 to 10 points. And those teams usually end up being really balanced and hard to beat. It's not rocket science. So I think with Ava, the other thing too, that's starting to get there's that confidence. I think these 2 and some of our other players have done a really good job starting to like kind of hype her up. And that's always great when your best players or your leaders are, making everybody feel valued. So hopefully Ava can keep doing it. She likes to bully me and she makes a lot of jokes toward me. So I don't know, maybe that toughness toward me she's doing it out in the court secretly. I don't know. She bullies me in practice. So like maybe she's just whispering things to like motivate herself, but she really has been. I think she had like 15 points and 14 rebounds against Byron. I think she had like 7 and 10 the other day too. Like she's been on a tear. So she's doing a really good job. And I think hopefully we can get her and Amani both going at the same time. It feels like for some reason so far it's been like one or the other, and hopefully we can kind of get them both like dialed in at the same time. That would be another thing that we can do to help going forwards.
Korah, for younger players watching this program, what's the reality of work required to compete at this level that maybe the fans
For the younger
don't
players,
see?
I would definitely say the reality is coming in ready to work, being willing to be coached and willing to put extra work in, and just willing to get reps in practice and take everything seriously. And I think the biggest takeaway from that is that talent might get you there, but discipline will really keep you there.
That was good. Nice.
Yeah, that was good.
That's gonna be on a T-shirt or something here pretty.
Jay,
Wow.
you can steal that one for practice.
Yeah,
There you go.
Ryleigh, looking back at this era of Pecatonica basketball,
Yeah.
right now it's kind of hard because you're only a third of the way through your sophomore year. So you got a lot of basketball ahead. But what do you hope to remember about how this team competed and represented the program?
I hope that they remember that we've competed every single night. We come out and we compete, and we've exceeded a lot of expectations after, like Rosie said, losing a lot of our varsity experience last year. And I ultimately hope that they remember the culture and like everything that we've helped build while being here. Only a third of the way there, but
Still young.
You're still young.
Rosie, on turning the page to this year, like you said, every year is different. how do you get and embrace expectations this year from last year and the coming years to compete
Yeah, I think
for
the
a
biggest thing
conference
for me is I
title
just
and a
try to
regional
stay
title
true to
and
this
those
group.
things
Everybody in
without
this group is,
it becoming a
got their own
distraction?
aspirations and as a team and individually. So I owe it to them and every team that I coach individually, because every team is different. So I try to look at it that way. I know our staff does. Like that's something we talk about, like just focusing on what we can control with this group and what they can get better at. I also think you have to use the strengths. Every team's different in that aspect. So we try to use the strengths of, maybe we're doing some things differently. It might not always seem that way to the outside, but there are some different things schematically we've tried and that we're trying to do. And I think the other thing too is when you're just true to that group, I feel like it makes it so that they're just focused on themselves. Like Ryleigh just said, like we're just trying to stay locked in on what this core group can do that's here right now and kind of just keep building it. And I think that's something that, when you do that, it seems to work and teams tend to then buy into, just keeping the standard and elevating it and trying to go as far as each individual group can go. So I would say that.
Hey, Korah, we kind of touched on this a little bit already, but, being one of the only 2 returning starters on this year's
I would
team,
definitely say
how
my
has your
leadership
leadership
responsibility has completely
changed
shifted
from
compared to
last
last
season
year.
to now?
Last year, I was expected more to support and contribute to the vocal leaders on the court. Well, this year, I had to actually step up and become a vocal leader. And I think that this year, it's really important to understand that it's not always about performing well, but more about making everybody better around me so that we can succeed as a whole and as a group at the end of the season.
Ryleigh, we talked about how teams are changing their focus to pick up what you and Korah are doing now. And we talked about the mental aspects already. What does it take to bring your best every night when teams are trying to knock you off? And looking at your current slate of games over the last 14 games, you've played some tough competition with losses to Winnebago and Byron, 2 of the top teams in the Big Northern. You also had that loss to Elgin St. Edward and then Rockford Christian. All those schools are bigger schools as well. They're all 2A schools. And then I did forget about your loss last night to Burlington Central. I didn't throw that one in there, but again, another loss to a bigger school. So far, your 5 losses, all the big schools. All right. What one of those games has stuck out the most to you? The losses
I
that
think
has
one of the
really
games that really
said,
stuck
"Hey,
out to
this is
me
where
was
we're
the
at right
Rockford
now,
Christian
but we
game,
got more we
just
can build on."
because in the game, the first half of the game, we were not really playing well together and clicking together. And then I feel like the second half, we kind of came out, there was a little fire under our butts and we were just going and playing how we know how to play. So I think if we would have came out that way, it would have been a different story against the game. But I think that one really sticks out to me about how that's how we were. And we're going to continue to try to come out from the jump and play like that the full game.
And I totally forgot that Rockford Christian is dropped from 2A down to 1A this year. So that's definitely going to be a team to watch as the season goes on as well because of what they have coming back. And I was able to watch Jay play Rockford Christian last year, and we knew then coming into this year that they would be an issue, but you guys won't see them. You guys won't potentially see them, any of our teams, until the super sectional, really, because they're on the other side of the bracket when it comes to that subsection. But you guys got to see them early, obviously. So as far as, what did you guys do in that game that you can build? I mean, it was game 2 of the season so far too.
I think
so
the biggest thing, actually, Ryleigh kind of just hit it on the head.
Things
In
out
the
at that
first half,
too.
felt like we kind of played individually, which is to be expected. New team, obviously, and everybody in a new role. And I'm sure when you got a bunch of sophomores out there and a junior, and we really kind of play one senior at a time, a lot of inexperience, right? They were probably peeing down their leg more than they were playing basketball, just being honest, right? And so I think in the second half, they started to play as a team and everybody just kind of relaxed. And I think everybody kind of dialed into what is expected of them a little bit. And we were able to kind of punch back. The other thing too, that was nice about that game, early in the year, don't get me wrong, I'd love to start the season 5-0 or 6-0 and win a bunch of games and get a bunch of confidence. But they're probably one of the favorites. If, they'll probably be top 5 in 1A the entire years. We were able to kind of take a punch from them and able to punch back and make it an interesting game. Obviously didn't do a lot of the little things to win, but I think that's something too, Ryleigh would say, people just started to play the way they're supposed to play, and that's what made it a good game and ended up being okay at the end there to kind of keep it interesting. So, yeah, for sure.
So, Rosia, this year you're counting on seniors Delaney Handy, Amani Boyd, junior Ava Ackerman we talked about, and sophomore Haley Hoffman.
Yeah,
What does
I think one of the best things about
what
this group
does
is
each one of
they're
them
tremendous
bring
kids. Like
that
they're
allows this
honestly one of
team
the
to play
individually
balanced?
they all bring strengths. I would say Delaney Handy might be probably one of the best kids I've ever coached, honestly, in my life. She has a tremendous IQ, and she is literally the most supportive person on our team. Like she literally led our bench mob last year, kind of helped start that. Like she's always celebrating. And then when she gets on the court, like even if it's for short amounts of time, she's going to do like she's the most coachable kid I've ever had, honestly. She's going to do exactly what you tell her to do to the maximum capability that she can do it. She's going to rebound. She does all the little things. And she kind of provides like that spark in a way that she's just going to do like, we just need a rebound. Hey, go do it. And she'll do it. And like those things you don't really notice as a fan, but like as a coach, that's something she brings, and she brings good leadership and keeps everybody relaxed. Ava, obviously, like the production is starting to come there. She brings some toughness. She's really strong. She's starting to, bring the toughness and the rebounding. And I think her scoring is starting to kind of pick up, give them kind of another option for teams to have to try to stop. I think Maddie Tipton and Haley Hoffman, I know you mentioned Haley, Maddie Tipton, also another sophomore that's been starting for us. I think the biggest thing that they're going through is they're kind of having to learn how to just relax a little bit. They're so nervous out there, obviously, because they don't have the experience yet. And I think they just want to please us and please them and please, everybody there. And I think they're kind of starting to grasp like, hey, we just got to relax and play basketball, do the little things. It doesn't have to necessarily be crazy points. Can we take care of the ball? Can we play defense? Can we rebound? And then when they are shooting, shoot with some confidence. I think that's a big thing that they're kind of working through and they bring. I know Amani Boyd is another one. She's played quite a bit, actually. She's come off the bench for us the last 2 years. So it's not like she's played like long stretches, but she's another tough kid. Like when she's dialed in, she doesn't play around down low. Like she rebounds really well. She can score. And I think when she does score, we're a different team. There's been some games where she's thrown in like 6 to 8 and you score 50, you get to 50 instead of scoring like 40. So that's been a good one. And I think the thing that makes it all really kind of blend in is like, they're just great kids too. Like there's no selfishness in the group. I think they're kind of almost too unselfish, everybody in a way. Like we kind of got to get some like selfishness into their role, if that makes sense. And like, this is what I'm supposed to do and I have to do it at a high level. And these guys too, like, sometimes, I think Ryleigh's going through that. She's learning that like, I got to shoot the basketball to score. I got to be a threat. Korah's learning like I can shoot and score, but I also need to get other people involved and I need to trust those girls that you guys listed. So I think that's something that the group's going through, but individually, like everybody's kind of taking the steps forward. Like I said, it's just day by day and hopefully we can kind of keep it moving and hopefully they stay coachable and take the yelling from Coach Paulson and myself and the go get them. Hopefully they don't take it in a negative and are continue to be coachable. And I think hopefully then that'll help, especially down the roads.
Coach just kind of talked about what some of your teammates bring to the table here. How important has it been for you
I
so
think
far this season to
definitely
trust your
trusting them
teammates
is
instead of
a big
feeling
role in
pressure
our standards
to
that
do
we
too much
set.
on your own?
Trusting them to do the roles on the team has really helped us, and it's made us harder to guard, but it's also taken pressure off of me and allowed me not to force bad shots and bad turnovers, everything like that.
So, Ryleigh, what's one way that you see this team looks different from last year's team? Doesn't have to be better, doesn't have to be worse, just different. Where are you guys seeing that you're building on that you didn't necessarily had to build on last year? Really last year, you and Korah were the two pieces that needed to be built into what was already being established there with Peyton and Kiana and Elena, and you guys filled that role perfectly. And now they're gone. You guys are the leading this group. And so that in itself is a huge change, but you still have those bases
I
there
think last year's team
with
was
you and
definitely
Korah
more
leading the
athletic
way.
overall. But when
But
you
what else
were
is
as
different?
athletic as
Just
we were,
different.
you could be a little bit more reckless and gamble a little bit more and still recover. But this year, I think we have to be especially precise in our execution and really be thinking about what we're doing and being in the right spot at the right time. And it's not just like luck of the athleticism. It's really like executing it to a T.
So Rosie, once we get through all the tournament play and everything, we start ramping up towards conference play. What challenges
Yeah,
do
I
you
think
see in
we
the
always
NUIC North
really value the conference
night in
games.
and night out
I'm
that will
appreciative.
have
I
to
think we have
force
some
your
good
team to
programs.
stay
Obviously,
sharp?
Jay, like you guys have been a standard, and I think you guys have won it like 4 or 5 years in a row or been, at the top. I think we know that we're going to have to play, and be ready to see anything. Like I think the coaches do a good job of throwing different things at us and vice versa. I think the other part of it too is like there's some really good players that I don't know that teams, not just on our side of the conference, but there's been some injuries and some kids out and just like teams kind of figuring out who they are. Obviously, like your group's kind of gone through that, and I feel like you're going to be a different team when you have everybody together. That's a no-brainer. Obviously, Kylie and Natalie are very good players. I think your role players are starting to kind of, instead of having to do so much when those two haven't been there, now they can kind of go back into doing the piece that they're supposed to do for your team. And I think Dakota's another one. Obviously, like McKenna Stuckey's just a straight-up problem. Like if you leave that girl open, she can hit a three, and if you pretend that you can keep her in front, she can bully and get to the paint. And they've got a kind of a nice little core that they're kind of building, and they're playing some good competition that's probably going to help them more in conference this year. So those are some big things. I think the other part of it too is like everybody having won. Obviously teams are going to want to beat you. Obviously that's kind of how it works, and vice versa. So I think that's something we appreciate, and it's nice to have in our conference. We've got some teams that really try to push us, and you got to be on your P's and Q's.
No, and that's one of the fun things about when you get to conference play. It's everybody knows everybody, and everybody kind of knows what each other's going to do. And it's just, I know on talking on our end, I know the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've had some great battles back and forth in the home and away games. And it's been challenging on both sides. But that's what makes high school sports so fun. And like you said, every team is learning how to play without, you guys with your seniors and us losing our seniors and Laney, and then some of the stuff we went through early on. And now we're finally, I think, hopefully going to get to play a full roster. I think teams are going to look different come January, and that's what makes January and February the best time of year for basketball. I think sometimes your November and December gets long, and it's dark a lot. It's dark when you go to school and get out of practice, and all of a sudden the sun starts shining a little bit longer, and you start gearing up towards regional play and the end of conference play, and spring's coming. So that's what's the cool thing about it. But I know it's every night, and I think in our conference, I know the North,
I've been very impressed. Like
it's a challenge, and every team
obviously
wants
like
to bring
take the
it.
records away,
And
because I
that's
think
what's
people
fun
only
about it.
focus on records, and I don't think
For
that's
sure.
fair to coaching, because I think there's some there's some coaches that are doing some very good things and really trying to like maximize what they have and what their program, where their program's at. Not every
Correct.
Selfishly, not every program gets to start with Elena Rager, right? Like, hey, you get Elena, and hey, you get Korah and Ryleigh in the groups that I've got. Like, I'm not stupid. Like, programs are at different levels. But I think Durand, Pearl City, you're starting to see it. Like, they've had some very good wins early in the year. They're winning more than they have in years past. I know Lena is probably down in their record wise compared to years past, but they still play really hard and they're learning. And I know they have a younger groups. And then obviously, like I said, you guys in Dakota too are always, going to be tough and give us good games. So it's a good thing, and it's you gotta be, like I said, you gotta be on your P's and Q's and can't take anybody lightly. So if you want to win it, you gotta go win it. So
Correct.
Hey, Korah, we've kind of talked about some of the key players on the Pecatonica roster this year. Is there someone that sticks out to you
That's
maybe
a really
so far
hard
that's maybe
question to
taken
answer, just because
a
I
bigger
think
step
that a lot of the
than
girls on
people
our
outside
team
the program
have
might
tried to
realize?
step up and just become take over their role on the team this year. But if I had to pick one person, it would be Ava Ackerman, because she just came so far from last year, especially last year when she didn't get a ton of minutes playing. And to come in this year and be a top rebounder and a top scorer on our team is a huge step for her and a huge accomplishment.
I totally agree with you, Korah. I couldn't say it better myself. Ryleigh, as a sophomore, we've already talked about your leadership and what you've had to do on that aspect of it. But let's look at the other side of
I
it.
feel like
What are you
I'm
still
definitely
working
working
on, trying
like
to
we've talked
continue
about,
to grow and
offensively,
learn
the
yourself to
shots you're
make yourself
expected
a
to
better
take.
player?
And with going along with being like a leader, not always like telling people what to do and how to do it. That's not really my vibe. It's kind of like motivating them and letting them know that they're capable of doing what we're asking as a team, and like from the staff, they can definitely do it, and just like giving them the motivation to do it.
Kind of off basis, Rosie, what we're talking about, focused on the varsity side.
yeah, so
But
we have the most players
talking
we've
about
ever had.
sustained success,
We have
where are
19.
you guys at
Had
the
the
fresh
biggest
soft
freshman
level
class we've
and the
ever had,
junior
or
high
tied, I
levels
think, for the most that we've ever. I
right
think
now?
so we're in a good spot. Our fresh soft's kind of going through the same thing. We have a couple kids that have been playing varsity and fresh soft, so we're seeing some things that they can do in the fresh soft game that we're trying to get them to translate to the varsity game, which is good. Last year I think we had a really good fresh soft team. This sophomore class, they're really good and they're winners. They want to win, and I think last year they were like 18-4. This year I think they've lost 2 or 3 games. I think if I'm remembering correctly, but we're in a good spot there. In the middle school, I think girls basketball anywhere, you know how it is. It seems like some grades have a ton of kids and they're like a basketball grade, and some grades they're not. But I would actually make the argument that like the 5th through 8th grade, if you put them together, like there's a really solid core there. I think sometimes they struggle individually, which is okay. I know sometimes, parents and coaches look at like, oh, our 8th grade is like the best thing since sliced bread, but it's like they're not going to be just playing by themselves, right? Like, you know how it is. You're going to be playing with other kids. So we're in a pretty good spot. We got a lot of kids that are starting to put in a lot of work, start playing outside of, just the basketball season. I would challenge them to do more. I would challenge myself to try to get down there more. That's something I've been really trying to do and try to get all the coaches on the same page. And we have some good coaches down there that are doing the things that are being asked. So that's a good stepping stone and a good sign. So I think we have a pretty good chance of, kind of keeping it rolling. And it also helps, like I said, we have a group of sophomores that there's a lot of numbers in that class right now. So by the time they're seniors, it's kind of going to be like the flipped role, right? Like Korah and Ryleigh's group came in and they had really good senior leadership to establish and show them what's up. And now hopefully when they're seniors, there's going to be, some freshmen, sophomores, and juniors that have they've carried the torch and seen what's up, and we can keep it moving. So I feel like we're in a good spot. So
I think that's one of the always keys is you don't want to. So Rosie, that's one of the things that, I've always talked about getting people in the right spot. And that's one of the things, and people to understand the big picture, because I think everybody is worried about the 5th grade state championship and not about development, right? And understanding that if you do have struggles in 7th or 8th grade, they're not going to be playing with just 7th and 8th graders when they get to high school.
Right.
And that was one of the things that I know early on when I took over, because we had some smaller classes, right? My daughter's class was a 2-kid class coming up that only 2 girls in her class play. But she played with Elaine's class last year that had 6, 7 girls that play. And then you just bunch that in and you hope you get consistent numbers throughout. But it's like when you're in 8th grade, you get to play with the top 5 players on the varsity from freshman to senior, and you put that group together. And as long as, like I said, I'm blessed with great junior high coaches, and I got Willie and Jackie Guy that understand the process of just getting kids to play, making it fun, and understanding that, yes, it's about winning, and you want to start practicing to win, but winning is not your end game. And I think sometimes that's the toughest thing for parents, to sit in the stands and see maybe some kids struggle, but when they can see at the varsity level, it transpire like you guys have done.
Yeah, and
I
one of the
think
things
it's
I've
easier
noticed
to swallow.
we're starting to get there.
Okay, we're
And again,
going to
it's
be
not always
okay
at the pace we
come
want, but we're starting. I
senior
go down
year.
there, and one of the biggest messages I tell them and the coaches, I just want them to compete. Like, there's a difference between playing, right, and just being out. Like, we got to compete. If you want to play at the varsity level, you have to compete for everything. You got to work hard. You can't be okay with losing, but also understand that like it's a process. You're going to lose some games. You're going to fail, especially at the younger age. The sooner they start realizing that and, are working on the fundamentals as well, and then you start getting that competitive mindset, all of a sudden, like, you can just step in and play just because you're a competitor. Like, you might not be the most skilled, you might not be the most, but you work hard and you do what's asked. And can you go out and play defense? Can you go out and rebound? Because a lot of times, like you said, some of those older girls that you're coming to play with, maybe they're the scorers, or maybe they're the rebounders or the passers, and, it makes it easier. One of the things too that's been really good, I'm starting to see it. And obviously the winning helps. Like, these guys, they're the ones that make it happen when they win, and the way they carry themselves and how hard they play. And our other girls too in the years past, like, it just keeps breeding, and that's good. So,
hey, Korah, Ryleigh kind of touched on already the Rockford Christian game, but has there been a moment this season
I think
that you feel like
moments that we've
this
been tested
team has
is
been
just
tested
really learning
or
how to stay
faced some adversity,
together
and
when
how
things
did your
aren't
team
going
respond
our
to that?
way. And, other teams get hot, they're shooting really well, or maybe our shots aren't falling, or they get a burst of energy and our energy is suddenly going downhill. And just learning how to get through those situations, being put in those situations really helps us learn like that we have to stay composed and play at our pace of game.
Ryleigh, kind of going off of what Korah just said, when things get tight late in the games, what identity do you want your team to lean on in order to be who they are?
No matter if your shots aren't falling or if you're not getting the foul call that you really want, you can always play defense and always rebound the basketball. And I think us trying our hardest to keep that consistent throughout the game could really help us. And the defense just comes from effort at the end of the day. You just have to put in the effort and talk, and it'll all come together. And then, like Korah said, I think through defense, we can definitely find ways to make momentum shifting plays at the end of the game and tight late in games, because offensively you're going to make momentum shifting plays, but other teams are going to get hot. They're going to be able to shoot the ball. But it's really when you get on the other end of the floor and you sit down and you play defense and you talk and you get that momentum shifting play, then you can definitely help you at the end of the game.
So Rosie, last question for you. And I remember talking last year a couple times to you, and the correlation was if Peck is playing the best basketball they are in February, we knew where that team was they were capable of doing. This year, what do you see this group has to improve on to be playing its best basketball in February?
Yeah, I think on the offensive end, I think the biggest thing, I would say there's probably two. We needed to take care of the basketball. I think there were some times last year we went through that too, where we were turning it over and we talked, our goal's kind of 12 or less. If you have 12 or less, you're kind of in a decent spot. So we got to start taking care of the basketball. You got to value it every time so that you can get more shot opportunities. And I think the balance from everybody, right? Like we need these two to continue to learn and keep growing and score. But we also need other players on the court to have confidence and start scoring and, take more attempts and keep kind of building that way. On the defensive end, like I said, we got to kind of keep people out of the middle, eliminate the penetration, and kind of clean up some rotational things. I think if we can start rotating more on a string, the old cliche, that'll really help. And that's something we're kind of working through. And it comes down to communication on that end for sure. If we do those two things, I really think we can compete with anybody. We've proven it the last few years. As long as we do those small things, we've been right there, even against really good bigger schools too. So, if we do that, I think by the end of the year we'll be all right. We know it's going to be tough. There's a lot of really good teams in 1A that I haven't even mentioned. Like there's some teams on the other side that have been, Eastland. I think River Ridge is going to figure it out, right? You got Sterling Newman. There's a lot of good teams, right? There's a lot of really good teams that we're going to have to make sure we're ready to go. But if we do those things that I mentioned, I think we have a good chance and we'll have a shot, and that's all you can ask for, right? You just want to have a puncher's chance at the end of every season, and if you have that and kids believe in it, then good things can happen.
Korah, what personal goals have you set
big personal
this
goal
season
is
that
for
maybe
me
even goes
is
beyond
just
stats or
being
recognition?
someone that my teammates can rely on and trust, and just whether it's encouraging them, holding them accountable, and pushing them in practices and stuff. My main focus is becoming a leader out there, and my biggest goal at the end of the season is just to show my teammates that I'm there for them and I'm gonna show up for them.
So Ryleigh, last question from you. Obviously, you've had a great start through freshman year. You guys are off to a 9-5 start this year. Just looking ahead at your schedule, you guys have a lot of tough games coming down the slate, not just in conference game, but then you guys have Stillman Valley, Boylan, and then you play Rockford Christian and Byron again as well. What does carrying the standard of Pecatonica basketball mean to you?
I think
and where
it
do you
means
want
to
to
me
see it
that
continue
we're
to grow and develop
continuing to do
at?
the small things and like holding each other accountable. It ultimately comes down to that. If you're not holding each other accountable, it's not going to work. You have to be able to take the criticism not only from each other but also from the coaching staff, and realizing when you need to step back and you just need to do what's being told. And futurely, I think it means like inspiring younger girls and helping them want to uphold like the culture and like legacy that we've like started to help like build and be a part of, and that make them want to be a part of it and make them want to come in and work hard and be ready.
Yeah, I think when you look at what you just stated there as far as like moving the program forward, and you guys have kind of already touched on it as well, the little girls that come to your games are looking up to you and trying to feed off of what you guys are. And right now there's probably some fourth grader out there playing basketball with her friend, they're looking at wanting to be like Ryleigh and Korah. And while you guys don't realize it, at the same time, myself, Jay, Joe, and Rosie, we've been through that. We've been there. And when we were in high school, we didn't always understand it. It wasn't until years later that you start to realize that the amount of influence that you truly have without realizing it definitely impacts how the generations keep coming and building that program. And like you said, Ryleigh, the culture, and that's the important part.
Now, I will say the biggest thing, and Korah, you touched on it. The biggest thing I think you can show the young ones that you guys have done so far, it isn't about necessarily winning and losing, but it's when they show up to a Pecatonica Girls game, you compete. And in a win or a loss, the toughest thing that you want young kids to see is bad body language. I always talk about you can lose a game, but if a 15-point loss turns into a 30-point loss, we got an issue, right? Like you can lose a game 10 by 15 points, but if it should have been a 10-15, but you kind of gave up at the end and it turned into a 30 and it looks worse than what it is. It's different. But when you go to a game, win or lose for a Pec Girls game right now, you guys compete. And that's one of the biggest compliments you can have as a program is win or lose, you know you're going to get your best. You're not going to win every game, but competing is key. And that's a credit to you guys.
Joe, any final thoughts?
No.
Well, we really appreciate you guys coming on the show. Like we stated, you guys got Rosie, you put together a tough schedule here, man.
I
you
could
guys
probably
are definitely going to
from last year
be
and maybe give them a hard time, say maybe we're playing,
you get there.
Tougher. I don't know. I would say the other thing with that, though, is that's the part Jay just meant about competing. Like, once you start competing, those teams want to play you, and that's how you get better in life, and that's how you get better. Those first couple teams, those first couple of years kind of paved the way for that. Now these kids get to reap the benefit, even when we're losing, or winning, right? Just playing in those big games, it helps you especially. So, yeah, we gave them a tough schedule. I think we have a tough one, which is good. So,
well, and I like the fact that you're not, I mean, yes, everybody wants to win. That's why you compete.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you're not, you know that you're going in this schedule knowing that you're not going to buzzsaw through it. And likewise, it goes to the old adage, iron sharpens iron. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I applaud the guys like you and Jay that you guys don't run away from losing. You run towards the action that's going to sharpen yourselves the best and get you more prepared for the longer run. Because at the end of the day, competing for a conference title, like you mentioned, competing for a regional title, those are the things that matters. The losses in the big tournaments, like the Dixon tournament or the Reindeer games and the State Farm Classic, stuff like that, that doesn't really matter in the long run. That's just building the resume up as you continue to trend forward and get into the more important games as the season rolls on. So you guys are off to a great start so far. Obviously, an early favorite once again in the NUIC North. Obviously, a lot of basketball to be played yet again. Some great competition lining yourselves up here as we move into the new year. You got a big one here again in Dixon with Newman, which will be a great precursor as that regional seeding starts to shift into focus as we roll into the month of January as well. And we wish you guys the best of luck. And obviously, coming off of a state championship, everybody's got the bullseye on your back because at this moment, and until it happens, you guys are the defending state champs. And with that comes privilege. And that privilege is being able to go out there and represent yourselves the best way that you can.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. So appreciate all the coverage and everything you guys do.
You bet.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We'll definitely see you down the road here coming up with a lot of games that you have coming on. But in the meantime, myself, Jay, and Joe will return right after this. Transform your outdoors with Baber Service Company. Landscape design and construction, including retaining walls and patios, mulch and rock beds, seasonal cleanups, and so much more. Serving Joe Davies, Carroll, Stevenson, Winnebago, Whiteside, Ogle, and Lee counties. Enhance your outdoor space with expert craftsmanship and attention to detail. Contact Baber Service Company today at 815-291-6334. We just got done having a great conversation with Daniel Rosenstiel, Korah Noud, and Ryleigh Alexander talking about Pecatonica Girls Basketball. And, looking at where they're at right now, they're 9-5. You take a look at those 5 losses. One of them's to 1A team in Rockford Christian, who was 2A last year, falling into 1A this year.
Yeah.
Going to be one of the favorites to get to state, but thankfully for our area, don't need to see them and won't see them until the state finals if we get a representative to that state finals again. With that, they still have another game upcoming with Rockford Christian. They lost to Byron. They have another game coming up with Byron. Here in 2 weeks, they play in the Eastland Shootout. They're going to play Weathersfield there. So they've definitely put together some strong competition. And as soon as they get into January here, they're going to be playing Stillman Valley. They're in the Dixon tournament right now. They're going to play Newman tomorrow. So they've definitely done a great job of putting together a hard schedule that really is going to test them and what they are. All the matter of a completely different team dynamic from what they were last year as well. Granted, they returned 2 starters, but let's be honest, those 2 starters are sophomores, and the other 3 that are coming in have very limited, if at all, varsity experience as well.
Yeah, I think we'll touch on that later with what you went through their schedule for, what that will mean in a regional setting. But the quick version of it is you've seen them in the top teams that normally go far, whether it be your Pecs the last couple of years, have a schedule like this to get ready for when you go on a road or in an environment of a regional championship to be ready to go. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes, it doesn't. I don't think it ever hurts you,
No.
right? It doesn't hurt you because you're playing teams you normally don't play, whether you're playing a Byron or those other schools. That only gets you ready for your conference schedule and your regional setup. But yeah, no, I mean, when we talk about, yes, they're grade level sophomores, but by the time of the basketball they played last year into this year, they are not sophomore age players anymore with the work that they put in, whether it be in season and out of season. And that's a credit to them as players, getting themselves ready and putting Peck in a position again this year to make a long run into the regionals and sectionals.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta admit, guys, I was very impressed with Ryleigh and Korah there, just some of their answers they gave. I mean, it didn't feel like you were talking to sophomores there. I think that's a credit to them. Obviously, credit to Rosie and his staff of, kind of the standard they've set for Pecatonica girls basketball here. And like you said, guys, he's really done this quickly over, 4 or 5 years here. So, I mean, very impressed by some of the answers they gave and how they're, balancing that, shouldering the load of being the new leaders in the team, but yet, trusting their teammates as well.
Yeah, they were definitely very well organized and thoughtful of what they were talking about while displaying a great level of maturity for being sophomores as well and understanding the roles that they need to play in order for Pecatonica to find success this year. And albeit they were well versed on knowing that, yeah, we did play as individuals early on. We're still trying to figure out what that team dynamic is and knowing that they're the key catalysts that have to continue to form that. But they also talked about, in their leadership styles about bringing others up, talking other players up to help build that confidence level in their play that will solidify that team as they get further down the road here. And, so far I would say that the record itself doesn't necessarily match what they're doing because they are playing at a higher level than I think a lot of people thought that they might be at this early in the season as well. And when you take a look at their losses, like I said, their losses are against tough competition. It's not like they're losing to teams that they necessarily shouldn't be losing to.
Yeah, I think
for sure.
Yeah, I think, moving forward, whether it be on the girls' side and the boys' side, looking forward, the thing I always look for in January is I think these teams will start setting themselves apart. I think when you have high turnover, like many teams have had, some of the teams that did not have high turnover get off to quick, better starts. But I think you're going to see teams now starting to play head to head come January. And I think that's where we'll see a better idea of where a lot of the teams are on the boys and girls side, because like we talked in the program, November and December, you start out and then that November Thanksgiving to Christmas gets really long. And then you have some long breaks in between play and it's hard to find your stride. But I think once January 5th, that Monday starts and games start getting played 2-3 times a week, I think teams will find their groove. And I think some of the teams we talked about that we wondered were struggling or got off to a hot start, I think that's where everybody's going to jockey for position here come the end of January.
Yeah. Should be a lot of fun as we continue to see this basketball season progress. And like we've talked about before, we're getting out of the holiday season. And usually when you're looking at the early part of the basketball season, you're talking Thanksgiving tournament, a couple fill-in games, maybe a Saturday shootout, and then you're into the Christmas tournament. Now we're getting into the meat of the schedule. We're going to start breaking into conference play and really start to drive that sectional seeding, which let's talk about sectional seeding. We'll start on the boys' side. Obviously, we've had some big games over the past week here, including the win for Dakota head coach Mike Bartelt. And, with that, we just had him on the show and we were talking about that last week. And clearly, Dakota was able to go out there, get that big win over Stockton to get that victory. On top of that, Austin Stuckey is within 28 points now of reaching the 1,000 point milestone. And when he does that, he'll become the third player this year in the NUIC to achieve that feat. So again, we saw this a lot on the girls' side of things last year, and now we're seeing it on the boys' side this year. Taking a look at some of these, one of the games that really stood out was Eastland beating Aurora Christian in 3 overtimes, 50-46. We also saw Forston in a good competitive battle with Newman going down 59-51. And then, we watched Galena beat Erie Prophetstown and Beecher down at the Warkins, of which now they're into the tournament semifinals as well. And they're going to get ready to play a tough Newman team as well there.
Yeah, I think, Joe, and we talked about it and you mentioned it, that subsectional B is really heating up in the fact of Dakota has kind of set itself as, the possible 1 seed. But when you start looking at East Dubuque, who is playing competitive, Lena, who I think can beat anybody any given night with the way they've played. Lena Winslow will get into the meat of their schedule come January. Pearl City, who, like I said, has the offensive talent to beat anybody any given night. And you go down the list, Warren continues to win.
Scales Mound.
Like, we just go down Pecatonica, who has went through some growing pains with some, kind of a over shift of players coming in and learning themselves. That subsectional regional site for those 2 schools of Pearl City and Marion gonna be really great competition, because even the teams we didn't name there, you got to come ready to play.
Right. Yeah, and these conference games in January, for the Dakotas, the Galenas, the Pecatonicas, Scales Mound, these conference games, they're going to mean a lot here as far as how the seeding shakes out in this subsectional B here. So it's, again, right now, if you're picking maybe who the favorite for the 1 seed is, probably Dakota. But again, with their schedule, that could change. They get knocked off a few times. That can change real quick. But again, Jay, you kind of mentioned some of the teams there. You like Lena, you like where Galena's at. Peck's obviously got the talent. They're young. Never count out Scales Mound in the postseasons. There's going to be good teams that don't even make the regional final out of the subsectional B.
Yeah. And then you move to subsectional A, and a team that I know Kyle has talked about nonstop. I know he puts it on our page of thing, Orion. Orion has really played well, and they're on a collision course. We were talking earlier. They're on a collision course down at the holiday tournament they're at with Sterling Newman. And you got to feel like the winner of that game, if they do meet, they both would have to win another game, would probably be looking at the 1 seed. And, in there too is Eastland. So you have a, and again, a lot of basketball to play, but, early on, those are probably your 3 top teams you're looking at of Eastland, Newman, and Orion. And Orion has been putting a whooping on people, but, you're going to want to see where Sterling Newman's at after what they did at the Forreston tournament.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I've got the luxury to see Newman a few times. I've called him on the radio. That 1-3-1 defense they run, they're relentless. It's going to take a really good 1A team to knock them off. Galena will get a shot at him here tomorrow night, and then possibly Orion's. Newman's going to be tested here the rest of the way. We'll see how this shakes out. But
yeah, I was able to watch the second half of the Newman Byron Forston holiday tournament championship game. And Newman definitely has some great players. Obviously, Garrett Mosnick definitely stood out. Asher Ernst, the Morrison transfer, was another big name for Newman as well. But taking a look at Orion, Kyler Evans is already scored a 38-point game, and then yesterday he put up 45 points in the win over Morrison, single-handedly outscoring Morrison, which I know what you're saying when you put up big numbers.
I have a saying for that, Kyle.
I know.
I have a saying for that.
But
yeah,
in most instances, I agree with you, but this kid's the real deal here.
And I'm not saying no real deal, not real deal. I just have a code that I live by, a code. And that is, if you score more or beat a team by more than what you score, when you score over 40,
you shouldn't be in the game.
I don't know if you should be in the game. And that just, coming from a coaching standpoint, I'm going to, we talked to Rosie earlier getting stuff. I'm going to put that on a shirt, fake 40. That's your fake 40, I call it. And again, no hate, no nothing. It's just a personal thing when I watch it. But that's the world we live in now. And you got to make that choice. I see it all over where teams will score a ton of points and then their starters are in late in the fourth and they're up 45 points and hey, the kid scored 40 points. And it's like, you're padding stats to try to get them. I get it. You're trying to do it. But at the end of the day, people see that. And that's my moral compass of the day, my Sunday morning sermon for all listeners, Joe and Kyle.
I love it. I'm here for the Sunday morning.
But we talked about it,
sermons.
we've talked about it, and I say it, and I'll be quiet on it.
But no, Orion definitely looking really good right now. Obviously, when you take a look at some of the rating systems too, they're not necessarily up towards the top, but a lot of people have their eyes on them as being one of those teams that can definitely make noise as they move down the road. And to your credit there, Joe, I think Newman Orion, while Newman right now is definitely has a higher upside right now, I think if we see that matchup in this Workins Championship, that's going to be huge because these teams don't play each other in the regular season. Despite the fact that they're both in the Three Rivers, they're on opposite sides and they will not meet in the regular season. So this is going to be a great opportunity if those teams both win their games as projected and move into that championship game.
Right.
No,
Well,
and
and the other thing too, Orion, I'm just going to say Orion hosting the sectional. I mean, that's it's kind of like look at the girls side. We'll talk about here in a little bit, but Eastland's going to host the sectional too. So, those are two possible teams, guys, that could be playing on their home court in a sectional, which is never a bad thing.
Yeah, we're going to have to bring our friend Nicole Brinker back on the show and talk to her about that, especially as we start to head into that breakdown of sectionals and the seeding process, because we can get her on either late January, early February, where we're really into the thick of it all as well, with those seeding starting to come out, and just kind of feel her out on that. Because I know she's definitely excited with where the Cougars are at, but likewise, they're a team that's definitely moving in the right direction, but they have not played the tough schedules of a Pecatonica or an Orangeville to this moment, but they're definitely winning the games they're supposed to be winning at the same time.
Well, if you're 12-1, you're 12-1.
Right.
And they, we played them early on, and they beat us. I don't know. I think it was 8 or 10 at the Forreston tournament. But they'll get some matchups here in their conference. I'll be interested to see how they match up with a couple of teams in conference. I know it was a great games that they've played, but they've been fortunate to win. And if you win, you win. And I think whether you're talking to Orion or you're talking to Coach Brinker at Eastland, you're never going to turn down a sectional host.
No,
especially when you're one of the favorites to make it there. That want to be bad cooking to get. But yeah, like I said, on the finishing up on the boys' side, January is going to fix a lot of things. And we talk about subsectional A with those teams. Subsectional B is just going to be one of those matchups that it's going to be great basketball start to finish. But on the girls' side, like we've talked about with Eastland hosting the one of the things we talked about, and we'll go right into where Pecatonica was, and you hit earlier. Pecatonica has played polo already. Who, and this is a feeling of so far come January 1 where everybody's at, right? Peck has played polo, who you would think be one of the top teams, and we're successful. They're going to play Newman this week, which Newman and Peck has kind of been on that collision course of who's the one, right? And Peck will also play Wethersfield January 10th at Eastland. So again, a lot of those things are going to be played out, and whether what you play and what Coach Rosenstiel talked about their schedule with the Byrons and all of that, like we talk about, don't really matter unless when you're playing these teams with your squad, moving in and playing a Newman and a Polo and a Wethersfield, if you're successful against those guys, you hold your destiny in your own hands.
Yeah. And looking at that subsectional, I would say that Rosie and his crew are right in control of where they want to be. And like you said, they have to beat Newman tomorrow. They have to beat Wethersfield here in 2 weeks. And if they do that, they're going to lock in the 1 seed.
Yeah, you do that. There's no reason. Joe and I have talked about before, you worry about some of the teams that maybe with them being so far away may not know much about, and they just do the look at a schedule and rank best record to least record. But I think enough people know what Pecatonica is about and what they bring to the forefront, that when you've beat the top teams in your subsectional, you should get, you're going to get that higher seed.
And we kind of talked about that. What about Pecatonica getting thrown in at subsectional B when subsectional A looks like a better fit for them anyway?
Yeah.
But either way, they got to travel to either Fulton or Galva.
Well, we talk about things that don't make sense. So we've joked about the last couple years of how
There-
it's been
yeah.
loaded with the Rockford schools in with us, whether it be Rockford Lutheran or Rockford Christian this year, right? Who's already beat Pecatonica and is top 5 team in the state, who's 20 minutes away from Pecatonica, right? They're not even in our sectional, and they're not even in our super sectional. You wouldn't meet a Rockford Christian until state, where in the last 2-3 years, they've
Right.
been a team that's been in our regional. So like that we say, make it make sense a little bit.
Yeah, it's a never ending conversation with IHSA, Jay, that we have all the time. Like, Duran's hosting a regional and Pecatonica's going to a whole different sectional. But
They
not
could
only
get-
that, but there's no reason. I'm sorry, there's no way you can make it make sense that Pecatonica is in the same subsectional as Stark County and Galva. Like, there's just no way to make that make sense.
Yeah,
So, and not that Peck's concerned about Stark County or Galva. I'm not saying that.
no. Well, what we joke about is they worry about travel and they use travel as a reasoning for football. When in football, you play on a Saturday afternoon where you have the whole day to travel, to where some of these games are going to have to be played
Right.
on a Monday or Tuesday night. And let's say Pecatonica gets a Galva regional
Mhm.
that's 2 hours away. You know
Mhm.
what you understand where I'm getting at with it, right? Like that's
Yeah, it
not,
doesn't make sense.
that doesn't do what's best.
Yeah.
But like I said, where you could kind of get ideas, and we talked with uh Rosie about, you try to get your schedule set up. So you're kind of playing teams in your subsectional you played the last couple years. So they've played the Lutherans, they played the Rockford Christians, they played those schools. Then all of a sudden, you won't even have to worry about playing. So then it's like you go a completely different way of where he didn't put a Stark County, Elwood, Bureau Valley. He got fortunate.
Yeah.
Coach Brinker helped him out with the Weathersfield one. And, they'll play Newman down at the Dixon
Yeah.
by pure really luck of wins and losses they're going to get to play. And like I said, at the end of
Yeah.
the day, I'm sure they're not going to be upset, because at the end of the day, they're going to be in a regional where they're going to be the favorite, and that's all you want to be. And whether you travel 20 minutes or 2 hours, if you can come home with a regional plaque, you're gonna be excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing for Peck too, let's just hypothetically speak, they go to Fulton or Galva for regionals. They come back to Eastland for sectionals. Let's say they win that. Then they got to go to Bureau Valley for supers. Like, they're going to be travel tested, which will be, like you said, that's
for
just
sure.
part of the journey. But at the same time, that's a lot of miles they're going to be
Well,
logging.
last year, luckily, I would take an Eastland sectional over last year's Sterling Newman sectional that everybody had to go drive down to. I mean, that was what it was. But, on subsectional A, 2 closer sites for everybody in Durand and River Ridge. When you look at how that's playing out, I think, you have Eastland and then you have East Dubuque, and then it's a lot of anything can happen in January with everything going on with everybody. And, I think everything else will play itself out. But I think early on, Eastland has showed that it's probably I would say that they're probably the one, and East Dubuque's the close two. And, after that, you got your Dakotas and your Pearl Cities and your Warrens and River Ridges, who we were expecting to come on. And they're going to be a host site. That'll be a tough thing for them. And, subsectional A, I think is more, you have your 1 and your 2, and then it's a lot of what's going to happen after that. Don't you agree, Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's several teams that could, make a regional championship game in that subsectional A, where you look at subsectional B and you got a really good idea of the top 4 are Pecatonica, Newman, Polo, and Weathersfield, so as of right now. But that subsectional A, I think there's several teams, Dakota, Orangeville, Pearl City, obviously River Ridge is hosting, teams that could make a run to a regional title game.
Yeah, and Kyle's going through, and we're looking at the Eastland. They're going to get a couple good ones there. They're going to get Rockford Christian at that tournament in Eastland on January 10th. And then they also play
Newman
on the 19th. So they'll get a good idea. Now, neither are in your regional subsectional, so I don't think it will hurt them, but it'll be a good matchup for them come regional seeding time that we're going to find out where they're at. On the East Dubuque side, can you pull up East Dubuque's schedule?
Yep.
I'm not sure who we're going to pull up East Dubuque's schedule on that too, because it's going to come down to where they're at too, because they were just winners of the Pearl City tournament. And, you'll look at their their schedule coming up, you know that they're going to play River Ridge, Scales Mound a couple times, which I would think they'd be probably the front runners in that conference with them. I would bet they play Fieldcrest at the Eastland Shootout. If you haven't heard, Eastland Shootout's going to have a lot of good area girls teams that day. So be good to pick up. But they play River Ridge January 1st. They will play River Ridge, and they play them again on the 6th, which I think is after seeding. So that first game of them two playing each other is going to be big on their end. But they're sitting at, right now, their record's sitting at 10-1, where Eastland's sitting at 12-1. So, you know, both with only one loss, I would just say body of work. Probably, you know, you'd look at maybe Eastland over East Dubuque, but
and both their losses are to big northern top hitters in Stillman Valley and Winnebago.
Who are the, you know,
Right.
There are two teams with Byron that are competing for that conference championship this year.
Correct. So both their losses are pretty much identical, and it'll be a kind of a crapshoot of if Eastland can win some of them games and if East Dubuque wins some of them games. So like I said, it'll be played out like always in January.
Yeah, I'm definitely geared up. I'm excited to see how, you know, like the Warkins finishes up, the Dixon finishes up, the Reindeer games finish up. Obviously, we got a couple things going on at the State Farm Classic as well. No girls teams this year were down there, but we have 2 boys teams down there in Pecatonica and Eastland. But then moving right into the January schedule, we start getting into that conference play. Then we start going into some of these shootouts. The MLK tournament's coming up. Plus, like you said, the Eastland shootout's going to be a ton of fun as well. We got that Eastland shootout on the 10th, and then the weekend after is the MLK stuff. And then, like you said, we start rolling right into that seeding process, and it's going to be a ton of fun once we hit late January, because like you said, this picture is already going to start seeing itself through. And, you know, I've been starting to dabble into the rating system. Obviously, I let go of our first ratings this past week, and we'll continue to update that weekly. With that, I'm going to start configuring stuff to see where these subsectionals are going to be seated at as well, just to start grabbing a picture and projecting out what we can see. I mean, obviously, we've already got an idea, but now we want to see also, you know, we know who the top seeds likely will be. You know, we pretty much nail down 1 through 5 right now. But with games being played, we'll start to change that picture ever so slightly. But with that, if we can start to project out the rest of these subsectionals, boys and girls, now we're going to start seeing who's going where as well, which will be even more fun.
And we'll know more next week.
So, man, always a fun time getting through the holiday stuff, and now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this schedule. Gonna be a ton of fun. Lots of big games coming around. We're going to have another great episode next week as we have the head coach of the Lena Winslow Panthers coming on, and Mark Blakely, still determining who we're going to have coming on with him. So that's still a surprise, but we're going to flip back to the boys side for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll come back to the girls side as we enter the last 2 weeks of January as well. So we got a lot to touch base on, a lot to keep up with, a lot of big games. Get out to those games, root for your teams. As always, root for the NUIC.